So, today I'd like to talk about what horror is. It's a very interesting subject, and I know I've talked about it several times in this book, Philosophy of Horror. If you're interested in learning more about horror as a genre, I think it's a must-read. But I think specifically I was watching You're Next. I don't know if you've seen You're Next, but I enjoyed it. I thought it was quite good. I liked that it didn't really fall into a lot of stereotypes and a lot of the common, horror movie tropes. But when watching it, I was thinking, this isn't a horror film, which is probably a weird thought. I mean, I don't know, if before I read this book, I probably wouldn't have said, this isn't a horror film. I would have said, obviously this is a horror film. This makes perfect sense, but I guess maybe I would categorize it as a suspense film or like an action film, and of course all of them are related, but I think the interesting thing about horror is they talk about this book is that it's important to have an enemy that's horrible, horrifying. No, I'm just restating the obvious, but actually the important component is that they're unclean, unnatural, some sort of something monstrous. So, like, if it's just human villains, then it's not exactly horrifying. And I mean, that's not entirely true, because if you make the human villain like pure evil or some sort of, they have some sort of horrible, I don't know, condition, that makes them look physically horrifying, or if they have some, mental, things, like, I don't know if I would say Silence of the Lambs is a horror film, but I think Hannibal Lecter could work as a horror villain just because he's so monstrous in his morality and in his personality, and certainly they go to great lengths to make him very unsettling and unnerving, that type of thing. But this is sort of an interesting observation and something you can talk about. And the book, I think, raises the example of Jaws. So Jaws is about a great white shark. I hope that's not a spoiler. But I think we're past the statute of limitations on the spoilers. So this great white shark kills a lot of people. I think everyone would say Jaws is a horror film, and I think the difference is that Jaws is a sort of an intellectual or has this unnatural abilities for killing. Because if you look, great white sharks, I watch a lot of Shark Week, and I think they have the idea of like a rogue shark, a man-eater, someone who gets the taste for human flesh, which I don't think has happened ever for sharks. Although apparently there was like a lion that killed like 60 human people. Like, that's just awful. But I guess this one lion somehow. Well, actually, they had a theory, and I'm only saying this because it's interesting. It doesn't have much to do with horror. But they had a theory that he was like had like some tooth problem or some sort of issue that he couldn't hunt with the rest of the lions, and they didn't like him, and so he was kicked out of the pride, I think, and so he had to find easier prey, which apparently he found that humans were very easy prey or something awful like that. But anyway, so like that, even though it's true, I think that is a horror villain, this lion that just hunts men, or a shark that somehow knows just the right time to strike and terrorize the beaches of Amityville. Anyway, So it's interesting that the actual impurity, the evilness, the grossness, or the sort of something that's wrong with the character is or the enemy character is what really sets horror apart. And so you find this a lot in literature, which is interesting because, like Lovecraft, basically the monsters are all so horrifying, so hideously unpure and unclean, that you can't he can't even describe them. And then you can talk about like sometimes a monster touches you. I think they mentioned a quote from Dracula where Dracula touches Jonathan Harker, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, this chill went down his spine, and blah blah blah. Yeah, it's interesting, and it sort of changed the approach I had for Neverending Nightmares, because I wanted to create something, something terrifying, and something, that would be a great horror villain. And so you look at like Silent Hill, everyone remembers Pyramid Head because Pyramid Head is awesome, and so I wanted to, create sort of iconic horror villains, for our enemies, and so that was sort of where I went with the baby monster, which is the only enemy we've revealed so far. But the baby monster is pretty horrific, and I think we did a really good job with that. But there's a lot of enemies, like if we just had like people with knives, or something like that, that wouldn't be as horrifying because people exist, and so that's sort of an interesting thing. And they actually have a lot of sort of how-to guide in this book of how to create a good horror villain, and I won't go through all of it, but they talk about basically like combining an aspects of one creature with another, like the Fly and the Cronenberg, or creating giant anything really, giant ants and them, giant spiders, that sort of thing, giant killer tomatoes. Well, maybe not that one, but but yeah, if you're interested, if you're working on a horror game or really like horror, I think you definitely have to check this out, and it will really give you a new perspective on horror and sort of a new appreciation for the things that are done right in a horror movie, and the things where they really nail them. And certainly I've sort of now have an eye for horror, and I probably wouldn't have ever talked about The Predator as a horror movie had I not been familiar with this material, and how they approach the impure, unclean, mysterious, and they actually go through the plots of all the horror movies. There's basically the complex discovery plot, and they basically mirror that in Predator, which makes it seem more like a horror movie than an action movie, since it follows the horror movie plotline. So anyway, I guess I'm not really in the business of recommending or giving book reviews, but this is the book. It's awesome. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this.